What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Albin-Counter Gambit complete course. And today we're going to be focusing on the move Knight C3 after the opening moves. Throughout the first 4 videos, we've concentrated on this, which is the most common move. But what happens if it's just Knight C3 right here on the 3rd move? I am so happy when I see this because I already know there's a good chance that I'm going to get a crazy attack. Things are going to go nuts, but the difference is going to be I'm going to be prepared, and hopefully my opponent will not be. So after this move, Knight C3, for years and years and years, the move recommended was e-takes. This is kind of the common thing. I used to play this for a long time, but it's also recommended in a lot of books, like one of my favorite books that I have, How to Play the Albin-Counter Gambit. It's by Eric Shilton. It's an old book, but a lot of the lines I've kind of changed and adapted over time with the help of engines and things like that and Grandmaster games. But a lot of the stuff is still relevant, and I use that book. But here, I don't take this anymore. It's not the worst move, but you get a lot more chances and a lot more crazy attacks and a lot more opportunities and a lot more preparation by preparing D takes C4. And the main reason is because the main response from this, well over 50% of the time, white is going to play a particular move. And if we flip the board, I'm going to flip the board a few times in today's video. What is a move that you might play as white right here? You don't want to take back and trade, he's going to trade queens maybe. This move looks a little slow. You're going to want to go ahead and push that pawn. Push that pawn. It's got some protection here. And hey, you're trying to get this pawn up there and into black's position. And that's the most common move from here, is white to just push D5. And that's exactly what I want white to do, is to push D5. And we're going to talk about the lines that happen after this knight comes out. They're going to be absolutely crazy. And then again, the most common move, just simply supporting this pawn with E4, a move they want to play anyway. And things are going to go nuts after that. But unfortunately, we do have to look at other options that white has after we take here, because they're not always going to push D5. We also have to be ready for other moves, such as what if they go ahead and they do grab this? That's a possibility. They may go ahead and take this pawn. They also might just play the simple and boring E3, or what I think is the best move, Knight F3. But we do have to know what to do if they play those moves. So first, what if they take here? Well, I've always said in the Albin-Counter, when you can trade queens, you usually do trade queens, and we're going to trade queens. Now, white has 2 possible recaptures, one with the knight, one with the king. A lot of opponents will actually capture with the knight, and I welcome that. I think that's better for black, for them to underdevelop with the knight. And here, everything's on the back rank. Yes, we are too, but now we're going to be able to develop, and it's kind of like black getting the first move here, and we've gotten the slight advantage instead of white. But we do have to look at what if king takes. There's something to note here in this position if the king takes, and that is the possibility of this knight jumping down here and threatening this fork. Had the knight took, which we'll look at in a minute, we wouldn't have to worry about that, but we do have to worry about that. So the most common move is just Knight C6. It's actually a bad move because it allows this, and how are you stopping this? Bishop can't even get out here because of the pawn. So the first thing to note is in this position, if king recaptures here, we have to keep in mind, we've traded queens, king recaptured. This is a real threat. Knight A6, we don't have to commit to that just yet, but we definitely don't want to commit to this and allow this. The best move, it turns out, is to get this bishop out. Over the years, I've liked bishop D7 a little better because it creates some discovered attacks. There's nothing I love more with a possible castle and a rook right here in the future. Nothing I love more, some discovered attacks in the Albin. So I play bishop D7 right here. Common move here is actually E4 from white. And after that, we can just get on with Knight C6 now, because now we have time to castle. So if he jumps closer, we're simply going to just castle, and we've got the rook facing towards the king, and everything is hunky-dory in that case, if he goes ahead and goes for that at this point. So Knight C6 is fine. That's why we didn't want to commit to Knight B6. We'd rather play Knight C6, but we couldn't play it right away because of this. But after bishop here and E4, now we're okay to play Knight C6. And the most common move is simply Knight F3. This position has been reached hundreds, if not thousands of times. And it plays itself. What are we going to do here? Obvious. We're castling, and we have what I wanted, a nice discovered attack, and white could go wrong very easily right here. Black already has the slight edge, and after bishop goes ahead and takes here this pawn that's available on c4, now we have what I wanted. Look at, there's a discovered attack right here. So where to put the bishop? Your choice, I guess. I mean, you can go up here if you want to and start grabbing pawns. It's not a bad move. It's not my move, but you can see black still has the slight edge right here. Yeah, the pawn can't take, king has to move. So say king here, we can go ahead and grab stuff. But for me, just to let you know, for me, I play a little more simple. I just play the simple right here, bishop e6 check. Attacking this bishop, which is not protected. We do have a check, so he typically can't just move the king, but sometimes white will just move the king. And that's wonderful because there's a hanging bishop right here. So we'll take that all day. But if white sees that, they might try to block like bishop d5 right here. But I'm just going to add more pressure and more pressure. And we're just, I mean, pressuring up here with not the fork, but the pin right here. And this is just excellent. Black is having their way right here early on with white. So I really like that. And if the knight decides to jump in here and block, pretty much same thing. Knight ge7, just add pressure. And, you know, we're threatening to take multiple times here. And, you know, maybe the knight tries to jump down here and attack this bishop. But you accidentally, you know, left a pawn hanging there. Poor little pawn here, just hanging. And if you want to take now, you got a problem after I take back because of the pin, the lovely pin. So love that. But let's go back. And honestly, most of the time after this trade, which occurs again after we've taken here and the pawn takes, we trade. Most of the time they take with the knight. And I don't mind that. Like I said, they underdevelop. And now we can play knight c6 with freedom because there's no knight here jumping in, threatening forks. So now knight c6 is perfectly fine and a good move. And for knight f3, we're going to go ahead and throw bishop f4 check. And most of the time, bishop will block here on d2. We'll take a look at some other options, but bishop d2 here, knight ge7 is fine. You could take, but I like knight ge7 because to me, I want bishop to take here. I always look, say, well, if I let them take and I take back, is that a nice place for the knight? Yeah, I think so. Possible fork of the rook. Maybe at some point you can castle and get a rook here, get a checkmate threat. I mean, all kinds of things can happen. So I just play simply knight ge7. This knight's sitting there a little too long. It needs to go to e7 like normally does here in this opening. And if the bishop takes, like I said, this is a beautiful position. This is a beautiful position right here. What are they going to do? We're threatening a fork right here. And a lot of times opponents just take without thinking, and you can get in this position. And now something like knight e3 to try to cover this square. But why not knight f5? And actually, if he accepts this and actually takes, most of them won't because they're afraid of this. But actually, this move is fine. But guess what? Better. Bishop takes f5. And we're getting ready to castle. We've got everything here. That rook is in trouble anyway. After we castle, just capturing back here and letting them do the capture and develop these pieces. And this is just too much strength right here. After something like rook c1 trying just to guard this square, well, we can go ahead and castle. And now we have this king is completely frozen. Maybe e3 trying to give the king a little bit of breathing room. But knight c2 check, like I said, we're going to win that rook anyway. And after king e2, trying to save the rook. I was going to say rook could take, but we'll just take. But after king e2, we'll just invade invade white's territory even more. d3, and he can either step in. He's going to have to step into more discovered attacks. This game is completely over because he can't go here. And there's no capture. I mean, this is just absolutely just obliterating white right here. So that line was after the queen trade, knight takes. I said simply knight c6 now is fine. And after knight f3, we're going to throw in this check, bishop f4 check. We looked at bishop d2. And let's look at that again because maybe there's a couple of better moves we need to be ready for. And I just said simply this because I don't mind if he captures. And if he does and the knight takes, we looked at this move knight e3. That was trying to prevent the fork right here and what to do, which was simply knight f5. he might actually play king d2 right here. They're trying to defend like this. I don't know if many opponents will play that, but he's kind of has a tough situation here. And here, maybe just bishop e6, getting ready to castle. Simple as that. Clearing the way. And if they, whatever, a3, oftentimes we attack a piece like that, we don't have to move. We're throwing in this check. We've seen this time and time again. And after king over to c1, maybe, okay, I guess we can save our knight. And I mean, who's better here? It's pretty dang clear. That king can't castle. This rook is kind of stupid here in the corner. And we're getting ready to maybe line up our rooks, get our pieces up into the game, and just pound white into the ground right here. So that's king d2 after this position. I mean, if they trade. We also actually, the best move, I don't know if it's the best, but knight d4 is another option. It looks pretty good that actually stops this check. But we can pretty much eliminate that with c4 or c5. And if they try to counter, I think the easiest thing to do is just take, and takes, a takes b4, and let's just create a very powerful pawn center right here with b5. And if they play e3, well, you could push, looks pretty good, but knight c6, attacking this pawn and being ready to recapture right here, and making this threat yet again. So let's say he pushes, we take. And if he takes, we take. And it's looking pretty good. So a few lines right there after that knight recapture on d1. Let's look at yet another line and the same thing. Knight takes. We got to be ready for these. Knight takes. What did we say to do? Simply knight c6. And after maybe knight f3 and the check, let's say, I said I was going to show you if he doesn't block with, if he blocks with the knight, he doesn't, he'll probably block this way. Knight c3. So do we take here? You could, but I'm really in no hurry to grab that. I like the bishop there. If you do, you can see it pretty much equalizes. I think just simply, again, I love this move in the Albin. Knight g to e7. Knight g e7. I play it all the time, right? That knight was here a little too long. Let's go knight g e7. And if something like e3 right here, bishop e6, getting ready to castle. Same old moves, just playing standard. Okay, white's playing okay right here, but even still, black with the edge. So maybe bishop d2, we castle. Similar moves, right? If they finally play a3, here we can play bishop a5, because if they push, we're going to take it en passant. So bishop e2, preparing to castle. And from this point, we can go knight g6, kind of play our typical Albin-Counter moves. If you don't see anything better, the typical Albin-Counter moves that you've been seeing throughout this video, they usually do the job. Just be careful, look for threats, and right here, castles. We could start taking here in the middle. Kind of, we've seen this in previous videos. And maybe, they bring their rooks over, we bring our rooks over, we have a game. We have a game, and we play our game. So, it's not always going to be a wild attack. But look, despite all that, black's completely winning. I'm acting like this is like a normal, nice, easy game, and black is still winning because we have this move. Knight d3, and if takes, we're going to break out with our rook right here, and black is just simply better right here with this bishop still here. They can't really push here. I mean, if they do, we have the option of en passant. And everything's looking really good right here. So that's just a completely winning position right there for black, but it's winning anyway. And just another line right there. So we're getting winning positions out of this Albin-Counter Gambit here when that happens. And it's usually a good thing. It's not my favorite to see when they take here, but it does lead to winning positions and good, powerful positions. Just not some of the crazy stuff we're going to see here momentarily. But probably one of the more boring moves is just, are we in the right position? Right, yeah. After the knight comes out, knight comes out, and we take here. One of the more boring moves is just simply e3. And, well, I'll just show you a few moves here. The first thing to do is just take it. And after normally e takes here, if queen takes, what do we usually do when we can trade queen? We trade queens. E takes, simply knight c6. Yes, we're letting them take this if they want, but let's say knight c3, or knight f3 here, we have a chance to play knight b4. And again, something to look forward to is this knight b4 variation, if we can get it in. And what are they going to do right here? Not a ton of options. They can't even go here to stop this because of the pawn. So the knights can't really do anything. Do they have to actually play? I think so. Do they actually have to play king d2 right here? Or king d1 or something? But either way, bishop b6 is coming in. Either way, even if they played king d1, bishop b6, getting ready to castle, same stuff. You know, if we castle and, I don't know, something random here, and we castle, this is not a threat. We have way too much on it, but even if it was, we couldn't take anyway because of the pin, and we're just completely destroying white right there. So keep in mind this move. Oftentimes, though, bishop will take right here, but then they hang a pawn of their own, and we're still threatening this. This knight's getting into the game regardless, and this is even better for black right here. Maybe, you know, well, actually, he's going to try to, you know, stop this right here, but we have a, we have a way to stop that. And, you know, I want to trade here. Yeah, that works. So black's doing pretty well. King is kind of in the middle, a little bit underdeveloped. We're castling with one go, and I think this is looking pretty good. Knight comes out here. Simple castle. And, you know, similar moves. Just the pieces just move with such, it seems like, nice flow in the Albin-Counter oftentimes, and that's what I like about it. But we're back to the e3 move. We take, let's just look at the more common, E takes d4. So from this position, after that takes, now a lot of opponents might want to play bishop e6, try to hang on to this pawn. We usually don't worry about this pawn, to be honest. We don't want to weaken b7, queen's coming out. So a lot of the variations, we play c6. But first, let's just get this bishop out. Bishop d6. Inviting bishop takes c4. And after knight f6, very common move right here is bishop g6, trying for the pin. But we'll just castle. And after maybe knight g to e2, getting ready to castle. Now, like I was saying earlier, simply c6. We are getting ready to get this bishop out and playing a pretty good game here. But I'm going to show you another variation in that e3 move. After this and the knight comes out, we take here and the boring e3. So we take, looking at pawn takes, and then we play the simple bishop d6. We don't mind if bishop takes here. We're going to go ahead of here and bring out our other knight. Knight f6 on the 6th move. And from here, if this knight comes out, instead of the bishop pins, a simple knight f3, we can castle. They castle. We're getting a pretty standard game right here. So I'm going to show you some moves here in the game that happened between Show Shipping and Zhukwang Empire on Lichess. This is between two Lichess players. And black played so well, played all the moves that I'd recommend. So first right here, this is the 8th move, and the knight does come out to c6, and white played bishop g5 right here. We're going to go ahead and counter that. Bishop g4, same thing. And after this little sissy h3, we're just going to grab the knight. Queen takes, and now this pawn hangs in the center of the board. Knight takes d4, which attacks the queen, and the queen got greedy here on b7. Now, it's not a bad move, actually, but black chance to go ahead and try and draw here. Rook b8. Queen grabbed the pawn on a7, and now rook a8. So queen went back to a7, and now rook b8. White decided he didn't want to just go back and forth and draw, so he took the knight, and after queen takes back, queen decided to move here to d5. So rook takes here, hanging pawn here up on b2. Game got kind of crazy, and after knight to e4, attacking the queen, queen simply moved up to f4, threatening a little something by the name of checkmate. White took here on d6, c takes d6, and then a4. So now white's trying to push that pawn home, but after rook d2, white finally caved to the pressure here. He sees this rook staring at the queen through the knight. So white moves here. That's a huge blunder with queen h5. Why? Because knight c2, best move right here. It's attacking the rook, and after the rook decides, I'm going to move and attack the knight. We see that all the time in so many games. Now we grab the hanging bishop right here on c4, rook fd1. but black is completely winning right here. So queen d3 was the move. Rook takes, queen takes, attacking the rook. Rook to d1, attacking the queen with some support there, but simply retreating to b4. Got the extra rook still, the extra knight here, and is even protecting this pawn with that move. So this was at the point that white threw in the towel and resigned the game. So a very nice Albin-Counter Gambit by Zugzwang Empire. But now we'll look briefly at one more variation that occurs after this knight and this capture, and that is simply knight f3. What to do here? Well, we'll start by grabbing the pawn. If queen takes, well, queen takes. And after knight takes d4, we're going to actually play right here bishop to c5. So keep that in mind. After the queen trade in that variation, the knight f3 variation, play bishop out here to c5. And if e3, just defending that knight, simply knight e7. And everything is fine here. Bishop will take the hanging pawn. We don't really care about that. Knight is going to jump out to c6. And if the knights want to trade, we're fine with that. Knight trade, castle, castle. Play your game from here. I think black is doing fairly well. It's pretty even. So black is equalized in that position. But back to the queen trade, or before the queen trade, let's say after the knight comes out here, we take, and queen doesn't take, but the knight takes. Here we're just going to play knight f3, bishop g5, very common. Simply h6. And if he backs up h6, oftentimes we do kind of go after him like this, but not so good in this position. We're just going to bring out the other knight, knight to c6, and we don't mind if knight takes. Before we capture here, we'll just trade queens as usual. Rook takes, and now b takes c6. Yep, looks a little bit, got a triple pawns kind of, but rook could come over here, cause some damage here with this semi-open file. And after maybe bishop takes here, trying just to mess the pawn structure up even more. It's actually not so bad, believe it or not. Yeah, white's pawn structure certainly looks better. But after e3, bishop e6, and if knight jumps over here to e4, trying to centralize, there's that rook b8. Rook b8's not bad. You're like, wait, what about knight f6 check? Well, rook to king ain't not going to castle anyway with all these pawn holes. E6, king e6, attacking the knight. Knight's like, uh-oh, I got no defense. I can't go anywhere. I can't get closer. I got to go back. So knight back to e4. Now rook takes on b2, and his position is getting kind of crazy. But it's interesting after something like maybe knight back to c3. Could play this bishop here. And why would he go there? This is to defend this pawn that we're attacking right here, so knight might go back to defend, but simply bishop g7, attacking this very guy right here. So rook wants to protect, maybe rook, just terribly ugly looking move right here of rook c1 just to protect there. Obviously we could just take it and then take the pawn though. So that probably is what's best, simply this. And okay, we'll start taking here because it's defended, but now we have this move. And so got to be careful as white right here, but black is actually completely winning here with that variation that I just went through, that crazy line I just showed you. But let's look at one more variation here. After we take here, and we were looking at a knight here. We take, and now we were looking at the knight takes here on d4 on the fifth move. And I said simply knight f6 right here. Simple as that. Knight f6, and after e3, c5. Let's say knight to f3, queen's trade, as usual. In this particular case, the knight is going to back up to take, and we're going to play b5, building this very strong pawn structure up here. And now knight c3 to try to attack it, simple a6, and we hang on. And we actually, he's got to be careful if he tries to play a4 to undermine this. b4, knight's running out of squares. If a2, is knight out of squares here? Well, let's play c3 first, because if he takes, we can actually push, and now the knight's definitely out of squares. Whereas if we just pushed here, he actually has a square. So after this move, we push here, takes, then b3, and the knight is completely trapped. So back to that. Also got to look for a4 a little bit earlier here. For instance, after queen takes, knight takes, and we play b5, he may play a4 right away, but we do the same thing. We push, and yes, bishop can take right here on c4, but simply knight c6, castles, and maybe knight a5. Attacking this bishop right here. Bishop may throw a check here on b5. Just block it. Takes. Probably could take with the king, and it's not so bad, but let's go ahead and just take with the knight. And black has the edge right here, even in that line. So lots of lines to keep in mind, but it's very tough to memorize these unless you just watch these videos over and over, which I encourage. But we got to get to the good stuff. We got to get to the good stuff. I waited too long. This time for the good stuff. This is going to be nuts. If you're still here, check this out. What did I say? Knight c3 we take, and the most common move, d5. What did I say? Simply knight f6. And what's white going to do? Let's look at it from white's perspective. They're just going to play e4. 90 to 95% of the time, they're going to play e4, and we're going to break out with d5. What is this all about? Just hanging a pawn. You know what? We're not hanging a pawn because we're also attacking this pawn, and we want knight to take so that we can take, and already black is significantly better right here, and it will get even more better. That's terrible English, but will be even more better after this bishop, who wants to develop anyway, sees this hanging pawn and snags it with the 7th move. Black is completely winning after bishop b4 check. And white is going to see really quick that there's no way to block this check. If knight blocks, wait a second, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, we're going to win the rook and have a good game. We'll look at that line in a minute. And if bishop blocks, well, we're just going to take it, and you can't take back because the only other piece defending is the queen. So that's big trouble. So the king moves to f1. And my special move in this position, which strikes fear in the heart of white, who's already like, what's going on here? White's already, by making this move, admitting like, this is not going as planned. So that's why I love this next move that I suggest. Feel free to play this a little safer if you'd like. Most of the time, common moves are castling and a6. Knight takes f2. Let's go for this right here. Let's go. I'm attacking the rook, and I'm attacking the queen, and I'm saying, what you gonna do? And 9 times out of 10, king takes, and we unleash an attack. We'll look at king doesn't take. We'll look at that in a minute, but let's just follow this line here. Queen h4 check. After g3, we're slide over here. We're taking the bishop. Things can get dangerous here. Things can get dangerous. There's this move right now. It's, we can just take it, but things are dangerous. Yes, the white is definitely terrified right here, but we cannot get complacent because the situation is dangerous for both sides. But right now, black is completely winning with correct play. The most common move here is queen e2 to try to save this knight and offer the queen trade. We don't have to make this trade in this particular case because we have this other check, and we're really attacking hard right now. Normally we will trade queens often in the Albin-Counter. Almost every time that we can trade queens, we do. But right here, it's a little. This king is out in the open. We have this check. We're going to use this check. Bishop c5 check. And if bishop e3 blocking, now we can take here with check, because if the queen takes, the knight hangs, and we're not really worried about this check right here, because we can take. You could play this check right here. And believe it or not, simply king d8. King d8. And that king out in the open, do you think this is a good idea right here? I'm not sure it really matters at this point, but we're just going to continue the attack. This king is, our king's not in the greatest position of all time, but white and black has the initiative right here. And with correct play, we're just going to tear white apart. But that's only if he actually takes with the queen here, allowing us to take his knight, which you probably won't. Probably will take king takes here. And now, again, we got to be very careful. What's the appropriate move? We're going to continue the attack. Queen e5, we can't take here, it's defended. queen to c5, continuing the attack. Say king e4. Now, king backs up is even more trouble because we have more checks. And we can take this, we're going to take stuff with check. Goes here, we take stuff with check. You know, he goes here, we take stuff with check. So if he goes here, that's even scarier, coming to the very literal middle of the board. This ain't king of the hill. If this king of the hill, white just won the game. This ain't no king of the hill, which is a crazy variation that I suck at. But after king e4, believe it or not, we just castle. And who would you rather be in this position? We should be able to checkmate this king pretty quickly from this position. So that's a wild attack. But there's so many caveats. There's so many other moves that we have to look at. So many other things to consider. So let's recap it and then look at just some slight variations to look at. So knight comes out, plays this move. We play this, takes e4. That's the 6th move. 7th move, bishop's going to take often. We'll still look at that for now. The bishop check. Okay, king moves. I said knight takes f2. Now, let's still look at king takes. Queen here, g3. Queen snags the bishop here on c4. Let's say here, after queen e2, and we throw in this check, let's say king f1 on the 12th move instead of the bishop blocking. So just that little difference. So like, okay, what do we do now? And should we trade queens now? I said earlier, when we can trade queens in Albin, we usually do. That other time we didn't. We had a check and wanted to continue the attack. In this particular case, we actually do trade queens. Queen takes, because after knight takes, we're throwing in bishop h3, and we're going to continue the attack over here. And after king e1, for instance, we have some options here. You could play bishop g3. You could try to, but we have this. This fork is always kind of something that you just have to keep an eye on in this variation. Always keep an eye on this. Sometimes you can allow it. Sometimes you can actually allow it. But let's just play the saver. Let's play knight a6. Stop this. Let's not give white any momentum. Stop the fork right here and get another piece out. We don't want to let white breathe too much. So right now, bishop d2, and we can go ahead and play bishop g3 like I was talking about earlier before we played this knight move. And this rook is, by the way, pretty much trapped. So he's got to go over here just to get some defense, because here we'll just take. Well, it does have the knight here, but I don't think he wants to move his knight to the back rank. But anyway, after rook f1, we take, king takes, and here we go ahead and castle. Looks a little weird to castle queenside, but we want to get this rook into the game and just plummet our opponent right here. You get my drift of it. It's just a massive attack. And we do have to look at more moves because again, it's just a lot of possibilities here. Taking here, bishop takes. This is the check. King here. I'll show you one more defensive resource, queen, that white has tried to use, which completely fails. After this and this and this and this, I have seen from this position actually trying to be aggressive here and playing queen a4. And we'll look at this move. Queen a4 can be extremely challenging for us as black if they play it at the right time. This is the wrong time to play that move for one simple reason. Yeah, we're going to take that queen. Even if he blocks with a bishop, we just trade with check. The queen is lost. Game is over. So that's not the right time to play queen a4 right there. So just wanted to point that one out. Let's look at some other possibilities here. After the push, the knight, e4 is just almost guaranteed. b5. What if they don't take right here? What if they don't indulge and take? And they play this move, bishop g5. First thing you do is cuss and say, gosh dang it, what the F? Why didn't you take it, man? That's the first thing you do. Second thing you do is bishop c5. This is the automatic response right here. And this is setting up a possible capture. King takes, knight check, pick up this guy. If now, it doesn't work now because the knight's covering, but if now knight takes, we got an alternate move, which is takes here, like I just explained. So that's why I like this move here. Bishop c5, just setting up that possibility. Now, the knight still might take. Didn't take the first time, so may not take the second time. But we're going to give a few opportunities. We're going to just kind of say, please take this. But eventually, we may play a6 and just move on with our lives. So let's say, for instance, after here, say he doesn't take, please, knight f3. Well, simply knight b d7. Defend the pawn. And if he takes, same thing. Same thing. It still works. So, but let's say he doesn't take. Still not taking. Bishop e2. Okay, now at this point, he's going to castle. Now at this point, we can try to attack the bishop, because if he takes, we can get the queen out, and this will create some great attacking opportunities. But if he just backs up to h4 right here, okay, at this point in time, probably we need to go ahead and just play a6, because you figure if you castle and he takes, it's not really working anymore. So at this point in time, after the bishop moves back, we'll just play a6, okay, white castles, black castles, and, okay, maybe something like a3, bishop b7, play our game, and black still with a clear advantage right here. And this is a tight, nice game right here. Good game going on. Good things are going to happen, and try to grind out a win here from this position if this ever happens. But it's actually rare. Usually the knight will grab that pawn at some point. But we got to look at some more challenging variations that happen after this move here. b5. Let's say he takes. Let's say we take. And let's say right here, instead of the bishop taking, I'm telling you, 74% of the time, regular games, bishop takes. In my games, it's 64% of the time. So well over 50%, but not every time. Let's just say knight c3 just backs up. This happens more often than you might think. The knight just says, I got my pawn, I'm going back. I'm not going to take too many pawns. Something's wrong with that. I'm just going to go back, and, well, we're going to grab it. And after b takes, we're just going to play knight d7. And now oftentimes bishop will take. Simply here, bishop d6, we're just going to play our game. And after knight f3, castle, castle. And we're doing pretty well. We actually have a resource here, e4. And knight will move to d4. And what do we play here? None other than knight e5, attacking this loose bishop right here. So bishop will back up to b3, more than likely. And you get in this position, it's a few moves deep, but always look for possible attacks with your queen. This is a good time to play queen h4, because we're setting a possible checkmate trap here by moving this knight. If some random move from here, just completely winning right here. We can't really jump up here yet because the knight is there. So maybe just bishop out here attacking the queen, trying to get rid of the queen. And with this knight here ready to leap into the action, this bishop, boy, this is just completely crushing it right here. So look for this kind of move here, queen h4. And if g3, we jump into h3, and this game looks over. But what are they doing? How are they stopping this? They're going to try bishop f4 right here, but knight g4, and white has to sacrifice the queen to not get mated. Pretty cool line right there. And that is if the knight jumps back to c3 on the 7th move, and knight takes, b takes, and we're doing very well right here. But I want to show you another very dangerous move from white to finish off today's video of this crazy lines, and something you just have to be ready for it. It's the one move, the one downside to this whole attack, I guess. What am I doing? Knight here. We take here, push. We're coming back to this variation where after this push here, we go knight f6, pawn e4. We're going to play this, takes, and takes on e4. What if after the bishop takes and the check is thrown in and the king goes here and we take? This is sick right here. But what if a move that I see 5% of the time, not very often, but it's played 11% of the time in most games, in normal games, queen a4. I told you earlier this wasn't a threat because we had this check and we were going to pick up that. This is a totally different situation. The knight captured. Most of the time the king takes, but here, Queen A4, threatening a discovered attack. We don't like, we like to make the discovered attacks. We don't want to see, this is crazy. The queen is attacking the bishop, attacking the knight. We got to be ready for this move. And the simple response, simply castle. We simply castle. If king takes, then we're just going to win the game after queen H4 check, and we're going to jump over here, and we're much better right here, and we're threatening that to pick up the queen again, and we're doing fantastic. But if queen takes the bishop, this is the critical line. We have to first grab the rook. Knight takes H1, and if knight F3, the most common move, got to be very careful right here. The actual correct move here is to try to open up this D file, and we're going to attack the knight with C6, because if he takes, we're going to take back with the knight and attacking the queen, and we're doing pretty well. We could probably figure it out from there because we've castled. We just need to clean things up a little bit, and black is much better here, but white is making it a little more challenging than we'd like it to be. If right here, the knight jumps back to C3, then we have this special move, knight A6, because we're attacking the queen, and so if bishop takes, we're going to take with check. And this is really good, because if the king wants to go over here, this is just, the king is moving, yeah, king's attacking the knight, but we're grabbing this pawn, we have the solid center, and if the knight takes here, if the king takes there in the corner, that's fine. We're just going to push forward, and just black is just much better right here. We have the central pawns pushing on forward. We have good resources here, and these rooks are coming in, and right now the knight's attacked, and black is doing fine. So most of the time, actually, after knight A6, instead the queen will move. Say queen B3 right here. Now we just start harassing this queen. Look at rook B8, knight defends. I've got to be careful here in the future of things, but this is just crazy because the bishop defends the knight defends the rook attacks the queen maybe C2 from here, and we keep attacking, knight B4. We ain't slowing down, and at some point this queen could get into the action here, taking here, and just trying to run over white best we can. But one more really challenging move. We saw the queen come out at a few different instances. But let's say the queen comes out before we take here. Now this queen, I told you, we already looked at after this, we throw the check. We looked at king here, and if we take here and then queen comes out, we can just castle. We can just castle right here. What happens if the queen comes out before the bishop even takes? Queen now comes out. This is the scariest move of all. Very rare. I have to say, it's very rare. 4%, but 4% is 4%, and we have to be ready for this. This is the scariest freaking move. So there's several of these queen A4s. Every situation is slightly different. This one, remember, we haven't even taken this guy. Castling doesn't work because, well, it's not even legal. So right away, that'll be a clue that that's not the right move. We don't have any discovered attacks. The bishop's not even out to throw a discovered attack. Queen's not out. This is a real early queen A4. And there's only one move that saves the game. One move saves the game right here. We cannot allow this discovered attack. We just cannot allow this discovered attack. Bishop here or knight here, both fail to queen takes C4, and are going to be putting a ton of pressure here on C7 while attacking this knight. So we actually have to attack their knight with C6, the only move that keeps the advantage for black. And now, if D takes, we have to play another very critical move, bishop C5. It's scary because like we're getting attacked. We feel like we got to defend, but no, we have to play bishop to C5 and counterattack there. And maybe this queen later on gets into the game. Who knows what could happen here? We're trying not to worry about right now what white's doing, because right now there's no specific move. Like, this isn't working. This isn't working. He could try this move, attacking the queen, but he's got to worry about this. He goes here. We're going to mate him. We're going to mate him with this queen coming into the game. So he's going to be checkmated very quickly after C7. I believe that's a mate in 2 moves, because after here, we're going here. That's ball game. So can't play that. So right now, this counterattack is very nice. And it turns out one of the only good moves for white is taking this pawn right here, which very well might do, but they might not because they're just letting you have this. Believe it or not, we don't even need to go after that right now. We've got our pieces out. We have a strong attack. He's going to have a hard time stopping this anyway. He can't put his knight here. We can just take it. He doesn't want to defend it with his queen. This move, we can just take it. We can just castle right here. We can just castle. We don't even have to go for it. You can, but you don't have to go for it. We're just going to castle. We need to get safe. This is some scary stuff. We need to get our king safe right here, and then this attack will proceed. And we're also, again, prepping the queen to possibly come out. So, again, this move is no good, but right now it's a little better than it was before. We still have this check. We can even just ignore that, play queen out here, and this is just, I mean, like you say, you're going to take stuff? I don't think he's going to take stuff because he's going to get checkmated. We can throw a check here, king here, and do we have to take this back now? Well, throw another check in. Rook check. This guy's getting creamed right here. So after we castled here, we're thinking about getting this queen out into the game. We're thinking about this check right here. Rooks are coming in, and just everything is working. And white's a little bit out of play now. We've castled. He's he's kind of cramped over here, and he's got some pieces, but they're not doing a whole lot. Our pieces are way more active, and this is not even close. Black is way better. So after c6, that's the move after this early queen a4. And if the queen wants to grab here now, we're a little better off because they're not dually attacking c7, and we have time to do something else of our own, which in this particular case, knight takes f2 because we're attacking. Remember, we're still attacking the knight. We don't want to take right away. We're giving the initiative back to white. We want to take here on f2. Most of the time, king will take. And after king takes, now we can go ahead and grab the knight. Queen takes b5, simply block, and we are much better here. We're going to try it. We may be able to get this check in, defended with the knight. We're going to have some moves, and black much better in this position. So after this sequence here of taking here, what if king doesn't take and say, I don't know what else he's going to try here, but he could try something like this. We actually just simply defend. We just simply defend the knight. We're also attacking this rook. We didn't want to take it too early because this is still a threat and still looks scary. But if he tries it now, at least we're defending c6 with the queen, and the knight can jump out here. And so doing okay. Actually, we're doing much better than okay. We're completely destroying it right here. But, we'd like to get safe as soon as possible. Maybe a3 to stop this bishop check. We'll go ahead and grab the rook here while we can. And we're just going to continue to play our game here. Knight comes out. Maybe a better move is first to kick the knight. But, play your game right here. We got this. Everything will be great here. But, wow, crazy lines today. Absolutely, Mike. I got a headache. Absolutely nuts on some of these lines. One more quick line I totally forgot to show. This is really important. So let's just run through this here. After the knight comes out, take here. We've gone through all this. The push, the knight to f6, the e4. We're going to play this move. Knight takes, bishop takes. And after this check, sometimes we looked at most of the possibilities here. Knight jumps back here. I touched on it briefly, but I didn't really show it through because we have to takes. This is a check. It does pick up the rook. And I mentioned that earlier, but I did want to show you after taking and queen takes, make sure to castle right here because obviously if queen takes, we're going to win the queen here. So just something to keep an eye on. And the next thing we're thinking about is bishop here to a6. So if just any move, we're going to actually play bishop here to a6. And this is good for us right here and doing fine. And again, if he tries to take this turns out to be a big blunder because after we take this pawn here, we're putting big pressure here, getting ready for this pin, and we're also, if he castles, he'll hang the bishop. So he's got lots of problems right here in this very position. He can't really castle, and if he tries this, then he hangs this. And just completely crushing it. So just wanted to show that little line right there. Just keep in mind, just castle in this position. Let the queen take this. It does happen. And then we win the queen and he resigns. So thank you guys so very much. Love to play this, the Albin-Counter Gambit. Let me know what you guys think. Hit that thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. Get ready for more here next time. Bye-bye for now.